Hello, everybody. This is Susan Clinton along with my co-host, Erica Mello. And today's podcast, we're going to be talking a bit about golf analysis, and just how PTs can be great movement analysis, even though they may not be a player of the sport. We hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, Tough to Treat. This is Susan Clinton, and I'm here with my co-host, Erica Mello. And today we're talking a little bit about golf swings and golf analysis. For those of you who have never looked at golf swings or don't think you can do a golf analysis, it's all about the movement system and thinking it as a physical therapist and just breaking it down and looking at it. I'd like to wish everybody out there a very happy new year. It's been very, very cold here in Pittsburgh and in New York, where Erica is, and we hope everyone is staying warm. In my part of the world, there's a fairly small window of time to be able to be in your game of golf, because it's certainly weather dependent.
Yeah.
And once we start getting into the very cold days of November and some of the icy rain and the winter temperatures, we have people who lay off of golf for quite some time before they can re-embark on the journey in the springtime.
I know.
And I've learned a lot from you listening to you talk in one of our earlier podcasts about the junior golfer.
Yeah.
You've been seeing, and I know that you have, you tweet a lot about it, and you've done a lot of work with golf.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to use this podcast to actually do the thing that we love to do best, which is pick each other's brains on some strategies and things. I had a gentleman who came in to the clinic. His wife bought him an evaluation and treatment session, a wellness session.
Awesome.
Because he wasn't having pain, but he was having problems with his golf swing. That's all she knew. She was like, I don't know what else is going on, but he constantly is complaining about his golf swing.
Yeah, I wish more people would do that, right? Wellness. I mean, that's what our profession should go for. So this is going to be good.
Yeah. So he came in, and I told him, we talked a little bit on the computer, emails before he came in. Here's a little bit of intake information. I still have to get intake information even for wellness clients that aren't coming for, specific, like I have pain in my shoulder every time I do this. And I told him, I said, just bring your putter and your driver. And I had to go back and do a little looking and a little studying myself before he came in. I just wanted to be up on a little terminology, because I think it's nice when they start talking terminology, I know what it is. Things like dress the ball.
Right.
And
right. Address the ball, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And this various things that they use with swing, and when they talk about the greens and the all of the
rough
different
and the
stuff.
Chip shot.
Yeah, that was actually kind of cool. And I looked at a lot of videos that they have out of swing, just to kind of reacquaint myself and kind of break it down as a PT would before he came in. And one of the things that I noticed about swing, this was so cool, was how close their feet really are together.
Yeah.
When you look at the pros really swing, and there's a number of YouTube videos out there that show them side by side, and they all have differences. So you look for the things that are kind of that you can see that are the most similar. And one of the things that I noticed is, as they swing from right to left, the left leg is the flagpole and the right leg is the flag. So as they swing, they rotate around that left leg. The right leg, bends and comes over, and and they have this beautiful spiral that goes all the way up. Yeah. Including their head, neck, and eyes.
Yes. And he was a right-handed golfer, right? I would imagine.
Yes.
Yeah, and the left foot really doesn't come off the ground.
No.
The back leg does, right? So if they don't have any rotation in their left foot, or any kind of, if they have a stiff right foot, they're going to just compensate somewhere else. And the ironic, I'm just going to digress for a second.
Please do.
I had a patient who was a golfer, actually, and she had some back pain, but she left golf similarly in the fall, went to play paddle tennis, which is an outdoor winter sport apparently, and she had issues with her back when she served. And just to stress the importance of the foot, she had no push off in her foot at all. She didn't have any. She was just losing control in her foot. So I taped her foot, and she was fine in her back. So the importance of the feet in golf and in tennis are so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so watching those videos and, kind of paying attention to that, like I said, the left foot doesn't leave the ground. It's the flagpole.
Yep.
And kind of just watching how the rotation needs to occur. One of the things, I kind of started putting together, like, what would be the key things for me to look at after I hear his story, of course, but, just have an idea of kind of maybe where I would want to go. And of course, one of my go-to things is standing, keep your feet on the ground, and totally twist your whole body around. Eyes, head, neck, shoulders, back.
Yeah, like a standing body twist.
Yeah, exactly. And take a look at that from side to side.
Yep.
And maybe see where things are moving well, where things maybe you're getting a little hung up. What's happening? What does that whole kinetic chain look like?
Yep.
And exactly what are the feet doing? So because I figured that the feet were going to be huge in the ability to transfer weight.
Yep.
Supinate, pronate, and twist.
Yep.
Because, supination is a twist, actually, of the foot on itself. And then being able to keep your big toe on the ground somehow while all of that is going on.
And he's been playing golf for a while, right?
Right. So here's the story. He's a great guy. He came in, and he grew up in the islands, and he said that, so he was exposed to golf with tourists or, tourist people, but he never, played until, well into his, mid-30s. He started playing. And he's been to many golf pros and with his friends, and he is, so he played as much as he could for a while, and then he felt like he wasn't progressing, so he kind of took some time off. He had some other things that came up, and they had some kids, and, but he's now back into it by the encouragement of his wife, because she wanted him to, get back out and do some things he enjoyed doing. So he decided to pick up his clubs again and get started. And so I asked him, I said, so what is your biggest thing? And he said, well, the biggest problem that I have is I have a really strong tendency to slice the ball. Right. And I said, well, why do you think that occurs? I wanted to, rather than me, well, show me what you do and let me tell you what's wrong. It was why I wanted to know in his brain, why do you think that happens?
Right. Yep.
And he said, he sat there for a second. It was really interesting. And he, kind of thought about it and did some stuff. And he goes, I think it's because I lose my balance. And I said, lose your balance how? And he said, well, sometimes I end up stepping over my foot.
His left foot?
His right foot over his left foot.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, yeah. And I thought, okay, well, I can see, and he said, and that throws me off. And then I'm going too far the other way.
Yeah. The angle.
Yeah. So I can't figure out how to control my swing. And so my instant thought was, you've got to be able to control your body first.
Right.
Because the swing is going to be the natural extension off of that.
Yes. And he shouldn't be, that right foot should be not coming off the ground. It
exactly.
should be twisting and as a lever, to get that sort of that transfer of weight from the backswing to downswing into the follow through. Interesting.
It was very interesting. So I thought, okay, balance issues. Let's take a look and see what's going on. So we talked a little bit more about, what he wanted, what his hopes were, if he could play very well, what would that look like? Just some things so I could kind of get an idea of his goals and what he really wanted to accomplish. And, so he decided that what he really wanted to accomplish was to decrease the incidence of slicing the ball, and increase the length of his drive.
Okay, reasonable.
So I
goals.
thought, okay, that's good. Let's just no. And I explained to him. I said, I'm not a golf pro. I'm not going to, uber analyze your swing like a golf pro would do. But what I am is I can look at your body and see what you're doing in your body, see if we can create some changes there that will change your swing. And then if it needs to be cleaned up, your golf pro is perfect for that. Because I think we need to kind of be sure that, I'm not going to be, become your golf coach, but I can become, the movement coach for your body a little bit and see what's happening.
Yeah, no, I love that because we know, with golf, it's such a synchronous sport that, if certain things need to happen at a certain time, give or take, for the ball to effectively go any distance. And that weight transfer is huge. And golfers focus a lot on thoracic rotation, and of course they should be, but I think sometimes people fall short of looking at other things in the body, like the feet. Hips are also quite emphasized in golf, but it's more about, like, I had a patient who had back pain. He couldn't rotate. He got his weight shift over, but he couldn't twist. He couldn't rotate his left hip. And sometimes with golf coaches, they tend to look at different aspects of the golf swing. And so I think if you are treating patients who are golfers, then I would strongly advise you to contact their coaches or their instructors, especially if they're really working and competitive and things like that, or, you know, their handicap is, you know, really important for them. And I think that's a good communication, because they'll appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the thing is that he was beginning to feel that he was, one of his frustrations is he felt like he was holding his friends back when they would go to golf because he wasn't, you know, improving as fast as he thought he should be.
Right. Yeah.
And and I can get that. You know, when you're standing there and somebody's watching you, you know, then the pressure's on and the adrenaline's on a little bit, and, you know, and he said, you know, when I practice, I'm better than when I perform.
Yeah.
I'm in a game. And, you know, and I, you know, so we talked a little bit about that. And I said, well, when you're actually on the course, it is different from practice. So I'm thinking about, okay, so let's take a look at balance. Let's take a look at rotation, and let's take a look at variance of practice, so it might help him achieve a little bit more variance during the game. So he said, when you practice, you're in one place, one going one direction all the time. When you're on the course, now you're facing this way, now you're facing that way, now you're looking at a hill, now you're looking downhill, now you're like, you know, there's trees, and now there's not trees, and then these things. So, and
the golf pros, you know, like the Tigers and the Rory McIlroys and, you know, Jason Bays, they know how to quiet their brains on the golf course,
right,
and really focus on that. And whereas the amateur or the, you know, occasional weekend golfer does not know how to do that.
Right.
And a lot of that, when you're at high performance like that, it's all about the brain. It's all about just, even if you have back pain, these guys seem to get it done.
Yeah.
It's like the graded motor imagery would come in really handy.
So it was really good. So I did have him take his shoes off before we did. You know, it's like, we're doing this and we're going barefoot. I need to see, you know, all the way up and down. And so, you know, we just started with just that, you know, standing, twisting, rotation. And, you know, his feet moved fairly well. Where he didn't move well at all was his hips and his lumbar spine. And then everything else was taken up into his thoracic spine. So you could see, you know, what was going on there. And, you know, and he was a little slow with his head and eyes to come around too, even after coaching. Like, I just want you to just like turn quickly. And, you know, the eyes and head would be really slow kind of coming around. So I just kind of noted that, made a couple of little notes, you know, thinking, let's see what happens when we put it together with some other stuff. I just quickly went into some standing balance. Can he stand on one leg? Can he stand on the other leg? He was okay. He wasn't able to stand 30 seconds on one leg or the other leg. And it was definitely more difficult for him to stand on his left leg for a longer periods than his right leg. So
interesting.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
You know, so, and then, you know, we took a look at, you know, just shoulder range of motion and internal, external rotation. And I, you know, I did ask him to turn and move his head in all directions and planes and quadrants, just to be sure that there wasn't, you know, that there wasn't anything being hung up. At no pain. You know, he would say, you know, I feel like I'm stiff here, stiff there. You know, this feels a little tight, you know, as many people do.
Right.
You know, they all say I have tight hamstrings.
Right.
You know.
Well, the full body twist is great, because I use that as well. That's what I would have done as well, because I think that, you know, I look at that for foot patients, for knee patients, because you need to have certain things that happen in that. But when you're turning to the left or in the right, so when you did that, like, I would have also maybe just see where his center of mass was when he was standing, like with my patient, you know, back the third podcast we did, he was all the way on the right leg. And I'm like, how do you get over there? So, especially if he wants to drive the ball, you know, farther. And I mean, you can't put him on a force plate because you don't have that. But I think just seeing where his sense of, you know, center is, and then having the twist. Did you notice anything in the twist?
Well, so what I noticed with him when he was just doing the twist, of course, he wasn't going as far to the left as he was to the right. So he could twist further to the right than he could to the left, just
Mhm.
overall.
Yep.
The other piece was what I noticed is when he would stand in front of me, um, you know, his base of support was a, a bit wider than his shoulders. This is not a big guy. This is a guy slight of build,
Build.
and so I thought that's kind of a wide base of support for
Mhm.
just standing. So I asked him to like bring his feet in and do it again, and he had more difficulty at that point.
Yeah.
Twisting around as much, he had less range of motion. So that was very interesting too. And I asked him what the difference was, between the two, and he said he felt a little more off balance with his feet a little closer together.
Right.
And
right.
so then what I did was we went, just right into pick up your driver and just show me your swing. Let's just see. I just want to see what I just saw, and I want to see what happens when you swing.
Yep.
And when he got his driver and put in, so one of the things he had been working on a whole lot is keeping his wrists extended.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, when I do that, I develop a lot of tension in my upper body. But he knows that he has to keep them extended. And so what he's done, well, I don't know why he did it, but anyway, he was showing me his hands and stuff, which was great, and showing me how he addresses the ball. And at the whole time I'm watching this, his feet are going wider and wider and wider, and he's in this really wide base of support literally to the outside of his deltoid muscles.
Wow.
And so I just asked him, kindly, I said, your feet, where did you learn to do that with your feet? And he said, well, I've always heard that your feet need to be underneath your shoulders. So I went behind him and put my hands on his true shoulders, and I said, this is where your shoulders are.
Oh, Lord.
So, yeah.
You wonder if he, prior to golf, did something with his, his feet in a wider stance position, because that's like an inherent thing ingrained in his brain.
Yeah.
And maybe he was trying to just, compensate for a perceptual loss of balance, right, at some point. Because if your feet are that wide, you're not going to drive the ball that far.
No.
I mean, how are you going to weight shift? I mean, you're going to, right?
So that was interesting. So I said, let's just do it then. Just go. Yep. Where you are with your, your feet where you want them to be.
Yep.
Just show it to me. And there were three things that I saw. Lack of weight shift. You can only imagine. There was a huge lack of weight shift.
Oh, God.
And the other thing was there was this real big hesitation right before, as he was going into the backswing. Mm-hmm. He would go into the backswing, but he would slow down, and actually even stop, and then have to overcome that before he went into the swing to the left. And I was like, okay, I don't know a whole lot about where the swing should be, or high or low, or all of this, but I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to stop once you start that.
Right.
That it's a fluid motion that needs, and what you're doing is building up the boom, with the swing, like back swing and boom.
And the pelvis drops, like with my other guy, his pelvis was dropping too much. So as you're about to, hit the ball, the pelvis drops, the knee internally rotates. This is what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And that's how you
the weight shift's supposed to happen. So I could see it was almost like he was purposely trying to slow down so he would make sure he didn't miss the ball, and that he would hit it with power right with that wide base of support. That's what it seemed like to me. I'll tell you what he thought in a second. And then of course his upswing just went straight up, but not very high.
You mean his follow through?
There it was. Yes. Yeah, it was and that was it. And so I asked him to, realizing that people, are standing in front of a PT, I just I made him do it several times. I said, just practice, get into the flow, so you kind of get into your natural rhythm. I'm thinking, well, maybe he's hesitating because he's afraid he's going to hit some. We have this big wide room. There was nothing that he was going to hit.
Right.
So I just wanted him to do it several times so I could see where he is. And when he wasn't paying attention, I videoed him.
I was just going to ask you that. Did you video him?
I did video him.
Yeah.
And then so then I asked him what he thought about everything and where he felt like things were breaking down. I needed to be relevant with him, and not say, oh, you're wrong, this is this. But he was so willing to listen and learn and do things. So the first thing we did was we just talked a little bit about, I said, really give it a powerful swing, like you're really trying to swing harder than anything in your life. And that's when you could see that he would kind of come over and actually almost start to step over his foot.
Yep.
And so he had, he just was trying to stay in that coronal plane. And so that concept of coming up the transverse axis all the way through, knew he needed to rotate, but I don't think he understood what that meant.
Yeah, so you're saying that he was limited in the body twist to the left.
Yeah.
So did he have enough thoracic rotation?
Yeah.
And his left hip was rotating appropriately?
No.
It wasn't.
No.
Okay.
His lower body was staying in the coronal plane.
So from waist down.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so but he thought that was rotation. That's what's so cool. When you ask people what those words mean, show me, he said, oh yes, rotate. And I said, show me what that means. And he would swing his hips side to side. It was like, okay, that's what you think rotation is. So this guy is from the islands. I said, do you ever salsa dance?
That's
looked
great.
at me like I was insane. So I got in front of him so he could kind of see what I was doing. A salsa move is dropping and rotating the pelvis back as the knee softens. And it's basically that movement that you need around the transverse axis, through the lumbar, pelvis, knees. He was holding himself so stiff and just going, left to right in a coronal plane. So I got him to kind of like start playing with that a little bit.
Yeah.
Then I actually had to go back behind him and get on his pelvis and say, this way and this way and this way, kind of almost like that stepping kind of thing. At first I had him just even pick up his foot just so he could get the idea of moving.
Yep.
And then we kept the feet down, and I said, just shift your weight on your feet, because he could shift his weight on his feet. He could pronate and supinate. He did it in the standing rotation. He just didn't know how to pull it all together into golf.
Synchronize it.
So he finally got the feeling of rotation, which was so cool. For the first time I said, this is rotation, and he was like, oh. You could just see that he just thought, I didn't even think I could move that way.
Yeah. Sometimes you have the person standing in front of you, whether it's a golfer or not. I call this like checkpoints, for rigidity, and I'll try and weight shift the pelvis. I'll try to move their thorax. I'll try to like rotate their shoulder girdle, try to move their head. And if they're standing there like a stiff board, especially with golf, it's like flying a plane. If you're checking your engines and they're not cool, you need to sort of take a step back, right? So if the pelvis is not shifting, if the thorax is not moving, you almost need to give them a little salsa, like you said. That's great because they can move. Their just brains aren't coordinating that movement pattern with the task that they're actually doing.
Right.
And
he's so focused on hitting the ball and keeping it going straight because he's so afraid of slicing that he's not moving at all from like the mid, from like underneath his ribs down. And he's just staying coronal plane. So that was interesting because that took some time to get him to feel okay about that.
Yep.
And then, so once he had that, we were able to bring his base of support in a little bit. And then I just made him put the golf club. I didn't make him. I asked him to put the golf club down in a position where he felt like he wanted to address the ball. I said, just hold it there and do that salsa movement. And see what happens. And, and I said, and mess with your feet. Stand a little closer together, stand a little further apart, see where it moves the best.
Yes.
So he could figure it out.
Yep.
And so he actually figured out that as he brought his feet closer together, he could actually do that salsa movement a lot easier than when he was in that wider base of support.
Right. It makes sense from the physiological point of view. How can you rotate when your feet are so far apart?
Right. And then the other thing, so then I said, now just swing the club again.
The club.
Yeah. Still had the hesitation and the stuff, but he actually started moving through his hips and knees, which was really cool to see. And, you could tell that his central nervous system needed a little time to coordinate. So we kind of played back and forth with some stuff. And I didn't want to keep doing the same thing until he got frustrated. It was like, okay, that's good. That changed a little bit. Now let's try this. And I said, let's just do some swings without the club, with just your arms going through and pretending you have the club. And, all I want you to think about is keeping your big toes on the ground as you do it so that his right foot wouldn't come up and try to cross over.
Right.
Keep the big, I said, right foot can do whatever you want to do. I talked to him about the left being the flagpole. That's where the twist is going to, he's going to stay on the ground there. I said, the right foot's going to come up some, but keep your big toe down.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we did the little salsa move again so he could feel it. And then he did a swing. And I think for the first time, or at least what I saw for the first time, was I saw that right knee, and leg begin to rotate around the left leg,
Yep.
around, but his foot stayed on the ground. And so it made him like actually rotate up a little bit better, so he was out of that coronal plane so much.
Right. It's like spinning on an axis.
Yeah,
almost.
exactly. So that's where I left it, because we were getting close to, I was willing to spend, 1 or 2 hours with him, but at some point you just fatigue out.
Yeah.
So that's where we left it. We went back and we grabbed his, driver again.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, just do it. And so he did. Still hesitation on the backswing, but he was getting the rotation better. And you could hear the wind when he like swung that club.
Yeah.
You could hear the whoosh for the first time.
Wow.
Which
great.
was really cool.
Yeah.
And, so then all I did was I just coached him. I said, now, when you do this, once you raise that club up, don't stop. I want you to just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Just go for it. And so it took him a little while, but he finally got to where he wasn't hesitating and actually coming to a complete stop on the backswing. He was like picking up the momentum and going. And then when he wasn't paying attention, I videoed him.
That's fun. So what do you think was causing his limitation in left rotation in the body twist? Was it just his center of like where his feet were, basically?
I think, I made so many changes so fast by just having him like get that, because he could move. When I introduced the salsa movement, it was discoordinated.
Yeah.
It's not something he was accessing, but he didn't have like what I would consider like true joint stiffness or, breakdown somewhere.
Yep.
I think it was just a discoordinated pattern in this it almost looked like fear. Like, I've got to hit that ball just right. If I don't, it's all over. I mean, that whole hesitation, that whole like, then boom, and then slowing it down and staying really coronal plane. Like, I don't want to like twist because the ball will go around backwards or something, So I think it started it for him. I don't know where it started in his central nervous system, but the input of changing his feet and doing that salsa movement was enough to be able to start the change through the kinetic chain for him.
Right. That's great, because I think that a lot of golfers, when they do the weight shift properly, some of them overextend on the follow through, and sometimes that's where the problems are. And even though they are weight shifting appropriately, but in the golfers that I've seen, a lot of them have issues with the weight shift because of some, or of just maybe some joint stiffness or a strategy that they've adopted for whatever reason, the wide base of support, the narrow base of support, or just maybe they feel that this is the way it should be done. And I think we overestimate. I mean, thoracic rotation is very important in golf, and hip rotation is very important in golf. But if the person has those things, which my patient did back earlier on in our podcast, and this guy, they have those things. When you isolate them out, they're just not using those movements in a coordinated synchronous pattern like golf. With golf, you really have to everything's got to be very synchronous. The movement has to be coordinated. It's the reason why I like to treat golfers is because I love looking at that whole kinetic chain, because it almost needs to be, they almost need to be moving. I don't want to say perfect because it's never perfect, but they almost need to be moving simultaneously. And if you can make a change at the feet or the center of balance, the base of support, I should say, and you can see everything, the nervous system adjusts, and then he's like, oh yes, I can do this, but without making him aware of it, or without what's the word I'm looking for, like the salsa move that. I think that was a really great idea, because he had the motion, and you just by telling him, well, you have the motion, you can do this, that's not going to like get him to hit the ball better, right?
No, and I wanted, but the thing that fascinated me and continues to fascinate me sometimes when we talk about this kind of stuff between you and I is when you stand back and ask somebody, just the simplest things, you tell me where you think you're having problems, because I think that's important. They have it in their brain, if I could just do this better, I'd be fine. And it may not be that at all, but if you could help them kind of approach and understand that we can get that better if we move a little more here. And so then you get the kind of like, oh, we're at, they've got the buy-in.
Yep.
This is where my problem is, but we're going to approach it from a different, I said, you've tried these other ways to do this. Let's try it from this direction and see if we can affect that better.
Right. It's not like you need a change of grip. It's not like you need to visualize hitting the ball a certain way. Those things are probably the golf pro will adjust or has adjusted, or the client sometimes adjusts them, himself or herself. But I just had a train of thought. Now I lost it. Oh, yes. So when he told you the balance, I think that was the key. We've said this before. The patient tells you what to do if you listen to their story long enough. Right?
Exactly.
And with him, people, I check one-legged balance a lot, okay? But this was more of a dynamic weight shift, golf club, right to left. That's different than standing on one leg.
It is.
So if you're looking at standing on one leg, with this kind of person, yes, I would have done one-legged stance just to see where he was. But then you look at the dynamic movement, and that is where he couldn't balance with the golf club, hitting the ball, coordinating all of that. So those types of movement patterns are what people should check when they're evaluating patients like this. I believe. And I think that's interesting because he, like he said, his balance, but why was he moving his right leg over the left? How could he do that with that wide base of support? That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, when he swung really hard that one time I was telling you about where he almost crossed over.
Yeah.
Because he's in such a coronal plane, he was staying in that coronal plane, that he was actually letting his left hip just go lateral. And to the point where he was on the outside of his foot, and guess what? You're going to have to cross over, you're going down.
Right.
So it was like and so it was limiting his rotation that he had in his thoracic spine.
Right.
And his grip was so tight. So when we changed that, here's what he said as he was packing things up. He said, I noticed when I was doing the swing at the end, my hand and wrist don't feel tight like they usually do when I golf. So that, just doing something different, his central nervous system had to adjust around, and he quit over gripping the club.
Yeah.
I didn't tell him to do any of that stuff. I just let his system figure it out.
Yep.
But I thought if we could just introduce a couple of things to get, kick basal ganglia out of the chair, come up with a few new motor plans, for the cerebellum to pay attention to, and automate it just a little bit by not hesitating. That let's just see where, and I told him, I said, you need to just go play now, go play, vary your practice, practice at different places, practice from different directions, put some variance into your, your swing practice so that you're standing on different terrains and turfs and, just walk around, and find different ways to do it instead of just staying in one little box, going one direction. Just for some fun, because you face that was one of his things. Like it on the golf course, it doesn't look anything like the practice.
Right.
It's like so then vary it. Give him permission to do that, and that was it was very cool. We got to the putting just a little bit, but it was the same kind of thing. He was just locking himself into such a wide base of support that he couldn't. And I know putting tends to be a little bit more coronal.
Yes, very narrow. Yeah. Yeah.
But he just, that wide base of support limited even that, that smooth motion. And it was limiting his ability to use his thoracic rotation. When you're like bent over, it's that rotation of the thoracic spine as I'm trying to do this for you on the video. And when I brought his feet, I said, just come in a little bit. Remember where your shoulders are. You're not, somewhere in the middle is the truth for you as you kind of change this a little bit. But I said, just give it a try. Bring your feet in a little bit. I know it feels weird. It's like holding your, crossing your hands one direction where I'm asking him to cross them another. And you can do it, but it feels weird. And I said, and just, practice a few putts. And he was able to rotate through his trunk so much easier. And so I'm hoping that will give him better control in his putts, but we'll see. He wanted to just address it like 5 minutes. So we did just a little bit about how he could change his practice there. And so that's what we did.
And you almost wonder that if with the wide base of support, if he had to be that rigid, even though he had the right rotation, like there's no place for rigidity in a golf
Mm-hmm.
swing. There is a place for control, but you may have all that motion, but when
Mm-hmm.
you're address the ball, you've got the golf club in your hand, you're so stuck in your ways that your arms have to be at your side, obviously, but a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people tend to be very rigid, like when you weight shift them. So I think it's really important to do the weight shift. Even
Mm-hmm.
if they're coming in with neck pain and they play golf, you're doing the weight shift. You're
Right.
doing you absolutely have to do wrist pain. I had a patient who had wrist pain, and she had her shoulder bothered her. No,
Mm-hmm.
her shoulder bothered her when she swung the ball, her left shoulder, and she had limited supination in her wrists. So we just addressed that, and her shoulder got better. So even whatever body part that ails the person, even though he didn't have any pain,
Right.
there's just no place for that in the golf swing. And I think that even if you give him like golf routine, have him do a little salsa on the dance.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you could even have him do, which is great? Have him put headphones on and have it like a salsa music while he hits the ball. While he
That would be
practices.
great. We'll work into that next time. I did give him 2 things to do before he walked up and dressed the ball. The first one was to do a little bit of the salsa moves.
Yeah, great.
Easy.
Yeah.
You know, and I said, make a little joke with your friends.
Yeah.
You know, but I said, when you get up and you address the ball, because he felt like he just didn't want to go into a salsa move then. He just wasn't, you know, I said, just remind yourself, bring your feet in, bring your feet out, bring them in and out a couple of times. And just kind of find that where you're comfortable. And I said, and then just bounce up and down, you know, so that you're kind of almost loading everything before it's ready to explode.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes him out of that, like, I've got to be really like stiff now. I am at the ball.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can do all this fun stuff over here, but now I'm at the ball. You know, it's like, that's where, like you said, that's where they need to like maybe put the music on as he hits the ball.
Yeah. That would be. I just thought of that, but that's
would be great. No, right? I'm totally writing that down. I'm going to take that and use that.
Because that's would get them in sort of that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And there actually is an app called, I know you know of Coach's Eye, but there's another one. I just found it. I don't know how to use it yet. It's called Huddle, HUDL. There's a couple. I have an iPhone, so it's in the App Store, but it's free, and you can actually pick a sport. And what it does is it puts, let's say, Tiger or Rory or Jason Day or whomever up there, and then they'll put your client below, and you can compare the golf swings or the running styles or the tennis. I haven't used it yet, but
I've heard of Huddle. I did actually capture him on Coach's Eye, and I'm still. Then I was gone teaching for a couple of weeks, but I want to sit down with it and figure out how to put him side by side to himself.
Yes.
So that, you know, I can compress the video and send it to him.
Yeah.
Because it was the differences were amazing, but I think when you can put them side by side, it's really like, oh, look at that. Yeah. And Coach's Eye has that little wheel on it so that you can slow it down.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
and speed it up and just say, okay, right here, there, you know, right here, you know, there's, you know, so a little bit, we need more rotation here, a little bit like that. But it was going to be too overwhelming to show him all that first day. He was so many things he was, you know, processing. And what I wanted to do was get out of his head and let his central nervous system learn a new, you know, just give him a little variance in his pattern to see if that could help him a little bit. Yeah. So the interesting thing is that I got an email from him this week. I want to come back and see you again. And here, you know, I feel like I'm doing better with my rotation. And he called it, quote, the new rotation, because he realized what he thought was rotation was not rotation.
Exactly.
Right? You know, I kind of
it was a translation.
It was a pendulum swing instead of a rotation around, you know, the area. But the other thing is that he told me, he said that in one of his swings, he hit the ball 237, I think I told you feet, but I must have meant yards.
Yards. Yeah.
237 yards, and he's never hit the ball that far ever.
That's great.
So it's almost like the little kids that are learning to bat, you know, at the T-ball stand.
Yep.
They're swinging and swinging and swinging, and at some point, boom, they hit the ball. Their whole central nervous system must just go, bang, that's it. Whatever you did, keep that going, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he probably had a kind of you know, he goes, of course, after that, I couldn't do it. It was like, it's, you know, that's how we motor, you know, I wrote him and I said, remember skill learning, when we're starting, we're learning a skill or changing a skill, we slow down, we learn it, we speed it up. And I said, and then we learn by error detection and control. We don't learn by success. We learn by your brain is kind of going, okay, no, over here. And so it goes this way and it goes this way, it goes this way. Sometimes it hits in the middle. But the more you do it, we're going to get a regression to the mean, right? And that's where it begins to happen more consistently where you want it to be.
Yeah, and people, I remember I moved recently, and I found an old book that I used in PT school on principles of motor learning. And I'm like, should I keep this book? So I kept it. I think that people learn differently, but especially when you're dealing with somebody who's playing a sport or they hurt because they're doing some form of running or whatever sport it is, even walking, people learn differently. And some people just want everything broken down. This is the feet, and that's how they learn. But I think you glean that from the initial evaluation. But the principles of motor learning apply to any kind of corrective program you give to whomever the client is. But in terms of a golf, I think this is a beautiful way of showing that even though they had the quote unquote, or he had the appropriate range of motion, he seemed to have the control, but he just didn't have the right balance, literally. And honing in on that, I mean, when something looks obvious, it's you kind of have to go there, I think, and especially when he said balance. And I think a great example of, you don't need to mobilize the hips, you don't need to mobilize the thoracic spine, because a lot of people who play golf generally, for the majority of them, the good ones, they've got the mobility unless they've had an injury. There's some strategy they're using, and golfers are notorious for tweaking their golf swings and their game. They're playing with this, they're playing with that, because it's a frustrating game. Because I played it, and it is frustrating. If you're not hitting the ball properly, or if you're slicing, the slice is like the golfer's worst nightmare. It really is. And it's amazing when did he say which way he was slicing, like right or left?
No, he didn't. That's a good one for me to ask.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if it's the right, he probably isn't following, shifting the right appropriately. Like, and if he's shifting to the left, slicing to the left, that would be another thing. But my guess is it would be to the right. But you can just ask him. And I think so for the people, I'm going to be devil's advocate for the people who would ask, did you give him any other home program besides the salsa on the golf course, on the golf course or at the driving range? Oh,
any other home exercises to work with?
Yeah.
So I told him to practice. So I said, whenever you're like, I don't know, brushing your teeth, hanging out in the kitchen or something, I said, do the swing without the club. You don't even have to put your arms up, but just let your body just kind of feel like, what does that feel like today? Boom, what do I need to do? And I left it at that because, but the biggest thing was to vary his practice as well.
Yep.
Because he was already so stiff in one way of doing something that I could imagine that he went to the same practice little spot every time and practiced there all the time.
Yeah.
And, his big complaint was when he gets on the golf course, it's not the same. So to me, that was like, then the way to change that is to vary your practice.
Exactly.
And so I asked him how he could do it, and he thought about it and came up with some ideas about how he could do it. So that's what I sent him with. I just felt like his central nervous system was starting to figure some things out, and I didn't want to put all these things on top of it. I just wanted him to I wanted him to feel free, and so I don't know, it's funny when you introduce movements, that involves the hip and pelvis, knees and stuff, sometimes they maybe feel like, ooh, a little risque, or this is a little wild, so he needed to feel safe in the places that he did it. He saw the value in it, and, however he wants to call it or whatever he wants to do with it, we'll kind of see how that sorted itself out. I'm excited to see him, to just kind of see what his central nervous system, what his central nervous system figured out as a pattern for him. And what can be the next steps to making some more changes for him.
Yeah, and I think just for the people listening, don't be so quick to have jump on the table and start to assess thoracic movement, or which you can do obviously in sitting. But if there's something, whatever task it is, the golf swing, standing on one leg, walking, sitting, you can watch them squat. don't be in a rush to get them out of that position. Look at how they move. And we are a movement profession. So get your hands on them, watch them, look at their eyes. There's been some really cool research now involving eye movements in golf, where you use these types of glasses where you do I forgot what it's called, some movement with your eyes, and you go up and down with this thing on your head. I forgot. I have to look into it, but I learned it on a course last year. But it's important to actually get them in the task or movement that bothers them and vary and play with it a little bit.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to get them on the table. I take a long time to get a person on a table. I don't know about you, but I spend a lot of time just talking to them and having them tell me what they think their problem is and move. Mm-hmm. It's funny because people are coming in, and I'll be in the room, or I'll go in the room and they're on the table already. I'm like, get up. And they're on the table if I get aware. I'm like, get up, get off the table. You're not lying, you know?
Right. So, I think most of the time our clients know that when they are coming in the second or third time, they hang out in the chair till I get there.
Yeah,
totally. Because they know we're going to be moving first.
Yeah.
Before we do anything, that may be table related. But yeah, it was just, here's a healthy, normal guy coming in, just listening to him talk, and he didn't how do you say, there wasn't any indications that I needed to start looking for red flags and doing all of this kind of stuff and everything. He was just a normal guy who wants to change the way he's moving a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And using motor control principles and movement pattern changes, and understanding that, thinking I understand the central nervous system a little bit. I don't think any of us really understand it, but knowing that it can make its own changes if you give it the time. That's, kind of the way I chose to approach this, because ultimately he's going home to do this. And how is he going to practice? He's really probably not going to take the time to sit and do this or do that. He needed to have something that was happening during that functional movement.
Yeah. And I wish more people would access physical therapists for this very reason, because our big mission is we are a movement profession, and this is fun. I mean, I could do this all day long with golfers. I love this stuff. And people don't necessarily have to be in pain. And I think if we get that message out, and this is a great example of that you don't have to be in pain to see us. You whatever state you're in, direct access, no direct access, you can come in to see us if you're not in pain. And I think that if we have a movement issue, and golf is certainly a lot of movement, then they need to access us for that. And that's what I think we need to do as a profession. And we are doing that now. It's great. I love this story. You'll have to keep me posted. Is he going to come? When's he coming in next?
We like I said, I've been traveling the last 2 weeks, so we're going to touch base, and he likes to come in when I'm home, because he can sneak in on a Saturday morning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it works out well because of his work schedule and everything else. So, so he'll be in probably in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
This was a great one, Susan. I liked it. I really did.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to do it. After I did that, I thought, this has to be our next podcast. This is
I know.
So much fun to talk to Erica about this.
Yeah.
So I could pick your brain on strategies and what you look at too. So
yeah, and it really goes to show you the importance of once again thinking out of the box, and the balance, and listening to the patient, and not jumping to your conclusions. Don't be open-minded about this, and that would be my sort of final word. Just be open-minded when you see people. A lot of times the cause of their problem is not where you think it is.
Yep. All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks,
and
guys.
I will see you, Erica, on our next podcast.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.